Thanks for choosing to listen to this Late Night Linux Family podcast. We're only able to do this because of the people who support us. None of our shows are paywalled, but our Patreon supporters can get most episodes early and never hear any ads. Learn more at latenightlinux.com/support or support us by telling a friend or colleague about everything we do.
Hybrid Cloud Show, episode 57. I'm Aaron.
I'm Gary.
I'm Sean.
And I'm Shane.
Welcome to the show about public cloud, private cloud, and everything in between. Our views here are ours and not those of our employers. So in a concept shamelessly stolen from Linux Dev Time, I have some hot questions for all of you. And I am told that hot questions is like hot takes, but questions. Either way, I'm going to get straight into the questions, and you can all tell me what you think. So, first of all, to you, is cloud native more about where the workload is going or how you deploy it?
How you deploy it, 100%. It's not even a question of where it's going. That's why hybrid cloud exists and why you can deploy things that you usually would deploy in the cloud, right? Like a Redis instance or a Helm chart or whatever, but still on your private cloud, on your, even on your machine locally. People do Kubernetes dev all the time. But how you dev and how you build your applications and how you deploy them, right? That's the cloud native aspect. That's where the technologies came from that you're using to do your work.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that containers not cloud native. Sorry, Sean. But yes, I think it's more about how you deploy the workload rather than where it is. Some kind of function as a service, absolutely cloud native. And it doesn't matter if you're deploying that on-prem or in a hyperscaler.
It's funny because I was pretty sure that's where both of you were going to go with this. And yet, I think if you asked the average man in the street about cloud native, they'd probably look like you were really strange. But if you asked the average kind of person in an enterprise IT environment what cloud native meant, I suspect most of them would tell you that it was workloads being designed to run in the public cloud, right?
A workload can be designed to run in the public cloud, but it doesn't have to necessarily run in the public cloud. And there are a bunch of businesses that are cloud first and would say that they use cloud native design principles in their application, but then for whatever reason, be it regulatory, be it something else, have to deploy it on premises. That doesn't mean that it's any less of a cloud native workload in my book.
Agreed.
Okay, so if it's about the technologies that you use, we mentioned containers and we mentioned function as a service. What other technologies would you say are something that distinctly make something cloud native as opposed to, I don't know, old school?
It doesn't have to be a particular technology, to be honest with you. It can be along the lines of how you deploy something, right? It could be your architecture for application. You could maybe say, okay, instead of just assigning this workload or offloading this work to one node that's static, right? You could say, I'm going to put it into a message broker and then have that be distributed, whether that goes to a function as a service or another node or a Kubernetes pod or whoever cares, right? The architecture of making sure that you're able to elastically meet the demands of whatever that workload is. I think that's what really makes something cloud native first.
Yeah, I was going to say something similar. It's more about how you architect the application than what the application is in terms of services that it's comprised of. If it's loosely coupled and it's microservices and it can scale infinitely or at least elastically, it probably more fits the definition of a cloud-native application than some containers that you might stick on a box somewhere.
For me, it's sort of an architectural and operational pattern, like containers, declarative APIs, designed for failure, automatable end-to-end. Like you can run cloud-native workloads in your crappy pile of laptops downstairs, which I do. Or you can run like a legacy monolith on EC2. I don't think that's particularly cloud native in any meaningful sense. And as usual, I would always say platform native would probably be more accurate. I don't find the cloud bit really accurate, to be honest. You can do a load of rubbish in the cloud that isn't at all cloud native.
I mean, look at the number of companies that are just using the cloud as a VMware cluster.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's not cloud native.
We were busy placing bets, Shane, on the side of whether you would try and argue your janky home lab was cloud native.
It is. It's totally cloud native. All the cloud native principles are there.
Containers are not cloud native. I'm telling you. It's not a thing.
2v1, Gary. 2v1.
What's a skill that's really important in your job that may surprise people?
Drinking.
Best answer ever.
But in all seriousness, I think I've been doing this consulting type job now for 7, 8 years. And there is a marked difference between customers that I have talked to on a Zoom call and customers that I've had a beer with. And I think those customers that I've taken for dinner or gone to the pub with, we get on much better. We understand each other a lot more. And I think we just get a lot more done. It's a bit of an unspoken thing. I can't really describe what or why, but I don't know. We just get on a lot better and have a much better working relationship, having burnt off some steam and gone for a couple of pints. So, drinking.
I do think that building those social relationships is super important, whether that's, customers, partners, or just your colleagues. It's so different when you have to be the horrible person who's asking them to do something they don't want to do. If you've got that kind of emotional credit in the bank account that, you're a nice guy and they know that you're not horrible, you just need something done. It gives a different context, I think, to the kind of questions and requests.
Yeah, I'm a human too. I'm not just asking you to do this to be awkward or because that's what a process says. I might not like it either, but I'm asking you to do it because I have to. I recognize you don't like it, but equally, it's got to be done. I think there's a marked difference between that coming from someone you've been to the pub with versus a faceless person at the end of a chat or at the end of a Teams call.
I think for me, the thing that I've always benefited from in my career is just being more dogged than anyone else. I'm rarely the smartest person in any room, but being more dogged and persistent about solving problems has definitely helped me an awful lot. I've just had enough scenarios in companies where there's been gnarly issues and it just ends up being me not wanting to stop until I've figured it out. And I think people will assume that important skills in jobs are like raw intelligence or deep technical knowledge, and they certainly make life easier. But I think persistence is just really important. And I have that. What I lack in everything else, I have that. So doggedness.
I think persistence and being able to communicate stuff. In all of the roles I do, both work and volunteering stuff, am I the best sound engineer in the world? Probably not. Am I the best DevOps person in the world? Definitely not. Do I know more about AWS than half the people I speak to? No. But I think you're right. Being able to just go, I don't know, but I'm going to find the right person or I'm going to figure this out myself. Or just being able to sit down and have an honest conversation about where you think someone might be going wrong and how they might approach it differently is really important.
I would say the thing that might be unexpected that I find most useful is being able to read a room or read a meet these days, I suppose, and try and get a gauge of what the different people in that meeting actually think or feel about what people are saying. I think that's one of those things that is quite hard to put your finger on, but when you're trying to run an effective meeting or you're trying to kind of get the project to where it needs to go, the ability to sort of understand where everybody is on whatever you're talking about is more useful than I would have expected before I went into it.
I would have to say along the same lines of you guys, soft skills are incredibly important. Tact and knowing, if you're on a call and someone's talking about, their plan for something, you don't make a face when they say something that you disagree with, and knowing how to advocate to your boss that we can't keep switching every week on a new topic because the context shifting and the cognitive burn on the team is too much, and going to advocate for your team for those kinds of things. Those aren't technical skills that you learn in school or in uni or whatever. These are things that you pick up over time with experience and no matter what job you're at.
I think there is time for the occasional mic drop, though. I remember I was in one brilliant meeting where a true genius was there, and somebody was saying that they'd been working on something for a very long time, and it's absolutely impossible. And this person that was a genius in the topic just sat there and they said, "Oh no, it absolutely is possible. I'll just code in the chat window and tell you how to do it." and drop the answer to their problem in there. It caused all sorts of relationship challenges, but it was a brilliant kind of what's a polite word for it? Flex.
But then you might argue that the other person's lack of soft skills might have helped them in that scenario, or indeed having better soft skills and knowing what they're not good at and knowing when to ask might have actually been better. So soft skills probably do still matter, even in those mic drop moments, right? If someone else on your team can come and solve the problem in 5 minutes, maybe you should have had the humility to go and ask sooner.
Yeah, it's almost like declaring something's impossible that's clearly provably false is probably not the best comm style.
Especially to engineers.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd agree with that. I think knowing when to ask for help is hugely powerful. Like, it's something that I think everybody could do a lot better at, and knowing when they've hit their limits and when they should go and ask for help is crucial.
Or just, when to say, I've had enough for today, I'm closing the laptop. Never in any job I've had has anyone ever said to me that I'm going to get fired if I just gets to 3 p.m. I've really had enough and I'm not going to do anything productive and I need to step away for an hour and go for a walk or smoke a cigarette or something. Like, life happens, and actually realizing that you're not saving lives in most jobs is actually also a pretty important skill that I think is undervalued.
Look at you guys, you and your soft skills. Is the cloud more or less secure than a company-controlled data center or on-premise?
This is definitely a it depends answer.
This is definitely a no answer.
Yeah, you're right. I don't think there is an answer to this. It depends on how you architect things. And I was really trying so hard not to say it depends. But sure, if you give everything a publicly addressable IP and you don't put any security groups in place, you don't do any east-west firewalling, you don't do any filtering on traffic ingress or egress, sure, it's less secure. But on-prem would also be really insecure if you did that.
If you think about the things that the cloud solves, it's a lot of like the unglamorous bits like physical security or hypervisor patching or like network primitives and hardware lifecycle, like things like that. But you can just get burned misconfiguring stuff at scale. A bad IAM policy is very easy to do. So you've solved one set of security issues and traded them for another. So it's like, kind of depends. Sorry.
Yeah, there is more scope to truly mess up security, at least in a public cloud. But you're right, I hadn't actually thought about physical security because who's doing that well in their on-prem data center? I mean, Shane, your laptops are literally under your stairs. So that's maybe not quite so secure as US East 1.
It is quite satisfying when you go into a physical data center and have to go through the eye checks and the those spinning sort of things that they let you through the doors. It feels a little bit more secure than just logging onto your console of your favorite public cloud provider.
I don't really think it matters, to be honest with you, whether it's in US East 1 or in a company-controlled data center. I say a company-controlled data center, all right? I'm not talking about a server in another room, all right? Let's pretend some companies have standards. Yes, we've seen bad stuff, but we've seen some good stuff, right?
Sure.
Mm-hmm. I'm convinced.
I think regardless, whether it's public or private or on-prem, whatever, I think that there's the same opportunities, the same vulnerabilities across the stack. Most vulnerabilities are attacking applications, the Linux kernel itself, frameworks. I don't think it really matters, or there's not too many vulnerabilities that are at like the hypervisor level that public cloud would catch that private cloud wouldn't. And either way, the biggest vulnerability is people. And either way, whether they have access to that data, I think it's still just as likely to be exfiltrated no matter where it's at.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, most attacks these days happen by someone finding a vulnerability in a low-level application and then moving laterally right through the network. And you can't necessarily segment networks any more easily in the public cloud than you can on premises. There are going to be a bunch of people that come shouting at me and saying you can. But equally, managing IP tables or Windows filtering platform at scale is difficult wherever you happen to run your workload. So, yeah, I don't think it matters at this point. You just have to make sure that you're segmenting workloads appropriately.
Do you think some of this comes from the fact that we would all architect those sorts of environments in a roughly similar way? And we're not thinking of the sort of old school approach where you've got a bunch of people plugged into a router that's got some kind of VPN connection to another office somewhere else, and that is sort of their security domain in a way.
I mean, I've seen people do really stupid stuff in terms of security, both on-prem and in the public cloud. I mean, I've seen instances where people are running a CentOS 5 box with an ancient version of OpenVPN on a retired EC2 instance, and that's their perimeter security. Equally, I've seen people still running, even in the last 10 years, Microsoft ISA server as their edge firewall on-prem. And Sean's rolling his entire head when I said that, dear listener.
There's no excuse.
So, it's easy to do stupid stuff wherever you run the workload, and people are inherently lazy. It's the reality.
Yeah, I suppose like all of these things, you go back to what's your threat model and working through all of those different pieces. And if you're really worried about physical security and you think you can do that better than the hyperscalers, then that's one thing. And then you go into the sort of hypervisor layer and say, do you think you're better at running your virtualization stack than AWS or Azure or whatever? And then you kind of go up the layers, right?
Well, if you think either of those things that you said, then you are wrong. But yeah, you're right. You got to figure out what your threat model is. And I doubt that anyone who is running an on-prem cluster is building custom silicon to run a hypervisor with no DOM0 in the way that AWS are. I doubt that anyone has literally obfuscated even the locations or street addresses or towns that their data centers are in to the extent that AWS have. But you're right. There's a bunch of other stuff that maybe opens you up to be more at risk in AWS. I mean, we've all seen the debris that hit AWS regions recently. And are you more or less at threat if it's just your company's own data center? You tell me.
Shots fired.
Literally.
I did not know Microsoft IIS is still maintained and has a blog which has posts as recent as 2022.
I mean, look, where do you think that people are running their crusty ASP.NET applications? What do you think all the C# developers are doing?
Oh, God.
They're going to run their workload somewhere, man.
Can't believe it still exists.
No shade on C# developers. I know some pretty cool C# developers, in fairness.
Would you recommend what you do to your kids or your nephews or your whatever else, that someone who's looking to you for guidance on their future?
I think this goes back and forth as the world changes, and my answer is no, I wouldn't. But mainly because the industry is very saturated with really good people now. And actually, I've had a friend recently who is looking to emigrate and is looking for remote jobs. But what he's realized is that actually when he's looking at being a DevOps engineer or a cloud engineer on the world stage, he hasn't got a chance. When he's looking to be an engineer on the local or even national stage, he's pretty up there. He's a really great guy, and he could probably walk into a job at a bank or some large institution in London. So I think it's really tricky. I mean, the other reason I wouldn't recommend it is because there are skill shortages in many other industries, which are far better paid now than IT. Like when I was growing up, my dad always said, do something with computers. You don't want to be out in a garage changing brakes on a Ford Fiesta for the third time this week, like I was when I was 18. But now there are no mechanics or plumbers or electricians, and I don't know, maybe that is a better path to go if you're looking at this purely from a financial gain point of view.
I think for me, I'm genuinely unsure. I'm not going to say immediate no, but genuinely unsure, and that's quite new for me. And I think it's probably almost entirely due to AI. It's changing the abstraction layer, like underneath the whole job. And the things that drew me to engineering, like the puzzle solving, the craft, building from primitives, like I'm not sure if those things will exist in the same way in 10 years. So I can't, in great confidence, predict what this role will look like. And I guess it makes it hard to recommend with that level of uncertainty. Like, if you like problems, sure, AI might just be another tool. I guess the framing still works, but it's hard to recommend with the same enthusiasm I had even 5 years ago. I'd maybe point them out like, solve problems with technology rather than become a software engineer, and then let them figure out what the shape is. If I was going to recommend anything tangential, it would be that.
You really just hit me there with what the fundamental problem and one of the objections that so many engineers have to AI is yes, there's the ethical and environmental considerations, and we've been over that a million times, but it fundamentally changes the reason that we all went into this industry, which was that we liked to solve hard problems and got reward out of finding that nugget post on Stack Exchange that some other guy 3 years ago had the exact problem I'm having now. So yeah, you're right. That is one of the reasons this is really difficult to recommend, isn't it? Is that I could not recommend a job that I know is going to be fundamentally different in 5 years to anyone. And I mean, yeah, you might argue that about being an electrician, like, yeah, the regs change and you've got to use a different type of cable, or you've got to ground stuff differently, or testing is slightly different. But that's because we've learned something and we want to improve. And someone has just come up with that, and it's safer or it's more efficient or whatever. But fundamentally, the skills required to do the job are the same in terms of hard skill set. It's a really interesting point that I hadn't quite thought of, Shane, is that the industry is now changing at such a pace that I'm not even sure what it will be in a year's time, let alone 5 years' time, let alone 15 years' time when my kids are looking to graduate high school.
Yeah, it's almost like I don't know what the abstraction layers will look like that you're reasoning about. Will you still need to be there reasoning about these things? I don't know. So it's just so hard to like, I enjoyed solving these types of problems. I don't know if I'm going to have these types of problems in the future to solve, so I can't really recommend it. I don't know.
Well, may we hope that it just becomes another tool in the toolbox, like so many things before it. And it isn't just the catch-all for every problem. And it's a bit like the cloud in a way, isn't it? 10 years ago, if you weren't deploying in a public cloud, you were nobody. Whereas now it is very slowly churning and becoming just another tool in the toolbox. But people recognize that there are better solutions to it.
It's true.
I think I would, because along the same lines that Shane said about fundamental skills is problem solving, right? The age-old adage of software engineers, what we really do is manage complexity. And I don't think that's going to go away. I agree that the abstraction layers are going to look different, and what you reason about will probably be different. But if you're interested in computers and how they work, right? If you have that passion, which I hope my kids do, because that would make my life so awesome. But if I find someone like that I can mentor, right, and teach them why I think computers are so cool, and why open source is so cool, and why understanding is so cool, and they reciprocate that, then yes, I would say absolutely you're going to have a great career. Enjoy your time. But it is rare where you have a work life and a passion that overlap so much like a lot of us tend to. I don't know what it says about software engineers in general, but I feel like there's a generalization that could be made about that. So I think I would, but again, telling them, be realistic with your expectations of why you're getting into this. Because if not, go do electricity, go do plumbing, go do whatever makes you happy, as long as you can afford the life that you want.
It's interesting because when you started answering this question, Shane, it made me realize that I'd thought about it at quite a different level than you had thought about it. And it probably comes back to what I would say if someone asked me what I did. And most of that, admittedly, is because I'm terrible at explaining what I do, even to people who are supposed to know what I'm doing. But I think there's also that you answered that very much from a perspective of, I do software engineering or platform engineering, right? Quite a specific job that quite possibly won't exist in the same way that it does today in 5 years' time or 10 years' time, 15 years' time. I think when I think of my job, I tend to think of it as, trying to solve cool problems with new technologies that didn't exist and things. And so, that's a space in the technology world that will never go away. There will always be new things. That's kind of what I like about technology, is that infinite scalability or near infinite scalability, and, coming in contact with things that you couldn't have learnt about at school because they didn't exist when you were at school. I think that's what I like about technology, much more than which batch of new technologies am I seeing this year that I didn't see 5 years ago. Well, that's probably a good time for us all to stop and start considering our other career options. But until we get back in 2 weeks' time, if you've got any questions or comments, please do send those in to show@hybridcloudshow.com. I've been Aaron.
I've been Gary.
I've been Sean.
And I've been Shane.
See you later.